The European pool stage is finally over. Thank goodness for that. We're back to proper United Rugby Championship rugby next week. But before we do, we've got to review what has happened in the Champions and the Challenge Cup and then see who's got who in the round of 16. I'm not here on my own. I'm joined by the Rugby A and B, Alan, who's back. Happy New Year, Alan, technically,
Thank you.
pod-wise.
Happy New Year, guys.
South African Alan, and Ben, policeman Ben.
Evening. Good to see you. Yeah, point out my occupation for the second week in a row.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thanks very much.
This is everybody's nicknames. We've got South African Alan, policeman Ben, and that Kalen. But that Kalen will be hopefully joining us later. So don't you worry, all you pre-angry Leinster fans who have clicked on the video already to leave him stick. Opportunities will be there. But yeah, so here we are. So Alan, last episode that we did, you weren't on, and we talked about how none of us were really enjoying the European Cup, or we can't call it that anymore because it's got Africans in it. Have you been enjoying it?
No, not really. I think the fact, I think I've mentioned previously, that the Sharks winning could probably helped garner a little bit more interest in the actual tournament itself. And I suppose it's pretty handy if you're going to watch rugby in South Africa and you're on holiday and you can go to like Durban and Cape Town and watch a game. But apart from that, personal opinion is that it probably disrupts the URC season a bit too much for our liking. I don't know if we have the finances or the squads to genuinely compete in any of these games. And I think our performances are actually worse than they were last year. Whereas all of the European teams coming over to the South African games seem to be playing better. And at the moment, you just don't know what you're going to get. You don't know which South African team you're going to get. You don't know what the performance is going to be like. And it seems to be a case of the first 20, 30 minutes, they seem to be up for it. And then in the second half, they're all just falling away. Probably the Stormers game yesterday was a bit of an exception to that. But basically, it looks as if, for our teams at least, if you're playing at home, it's a one-sided victory. And if you're playing away from home, it's a pretty one-sided loss. So that's not really optimal for.
Yeah, it's a great point about not knowing what you're going to get, because that's something that, in like podcasting and content creation, people talk about a lot. When people watch our podcast, they know what they're going to get, who the characters are. Everybody knows that every URC team is going to get spoken about, and that's great. But from a product point of view for Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup, when you watch a game, you don't know what you're going to get unless you assume it's going to be, like you said, a one-sided, slightly boring game. I think the only really good game was Toulon versus Glasgow, really.
Yeah, I think the Stormers had a decent outing yesterday as well. But again, they were never really going to, I don't know if they were ever really going to win the game, but at least there were slight improvements to what we've been seeing from them.
I was surprised that they took like Manny Labok and Warwick Clant and stuff and stuck them in the stands. Like, surely the whole point of not selecting them was to not take them on the journey.
Yeah, so they can give them, I know they were getting a rest, but it would have just been a couple of tickets they probably didn't need to pay for. So there you go.
Yeah. All right then. So us being, a Scarlets fan, a Lions fan, and an Edinburgh fan, we're going to talk about the Challenge Cup first, which is good, I think, because Challenge Cup doesn't get as much spoken about. So I'm going to share the screen and we'll start off by talking about Pool 1. Oh, I need to mess around with it to make sure that I don't share the wrong thing. Not that I've got anything that I don't want people to see, obviously,
Okay, you're right.
Transparency. I'm Mr. Transparency. But here we go.
A lot of toolbars.
Yep. So Pool 1 was won by Connacht. So it contained Connacht, Lyon, Perpignan, Cardiff, Rugby, Cheetahs, and Zebra, and it finished in that order. Where should we start then? So we haven't got Kalen yet, but the URC representatives were Connacht, Cardiff, Zebra, and are we counting Cheetahs?
I think so. I think it's not much to say about that.
Yeah.
Okay, Alan. So what's your take on the Cheetahs in this tournament? You've been following them much?
I try. I mean, they're probably my second favourite South African team. The issue with the Cheetahs is they've been they've kind of always been the whipping boys of South African rugby, because they're always the first to do something and then they get chucked off to the side. So they are a South African favourite. Obviously, we all know they don't get to play any of their games from home, which isn't ideal. And they do make a good effort. I think when it was still the Pro 14, was it the Pro 14 back then? It was them and the Kings.
Yeah.
And they had a couple of seasons where they actually did all right and
Yeah,
got to like the
they
playoffs and that
played
kind of thing.
us in a quarterfinal playoff at the park. So I think they made the playoffs at least one season, maybe two.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as that, and then obviously all the other teams have come in and it was the same with Super Rugby. They got the opportunity to play in Super Rugby, but they had to play as they had to have a playoff against the Lions, and going back even further than that, they were combined with the Lions to form the Cats.
Was it the Super Cats, the Golden Cats?
Yeah, the Golden Cats. Yeah, so we're talking old school there now. But yeah, so I always feel sorry for the Cheetahs, but I don't think they haven't done worse than any of the other South African teams.
One
so
win.
I think that's so
And they got a win and a draw. That's not too bad considering it's a Currie Cup side playing against Challenge Cup opposition, the likes of. To be fair, there's no one that good in this pool. Sorry, Cardiff. Perpignan getting a comfortable win over Zebra was a bit disappointing for me as a Scarlets fan, but we'll talk about it later. Connacht, look, 4 wins from 4, 154 points scored, 73 conceded. That's not bad, is it? I mean, they've been bringing out their Irish internationals in this one. Do we think that Connacht could be a contender for the Challenge Cup?
I believe so. I think so.
Home tie the whole way now, aren't they? So,
yeah, perfect 20 points as well from 4 games.
Yeah.
Cardiff, I think Cardiff will be a bit disappointed with how their Challenge Cup campaign went, honestly. 1 win, which is the home game over Cheetahs. I think they'll be disappointed with their performance against Connacht in the 4th rounds that we just witnessed. And, not the performances out in Lyon and I think it was Perpignan, the other team they played, weren't too bad. Just moments cost them. I think they lost one of the games by 3 points. They end up with 91 points scored, 98 against. So, a bit meh. And then Zebra, I think Zebra will be the ones most disappointed not to pick up anything from this campaign. Normally they're good for a win in the Challenge Cup, so that's a bit disappointing for Zebra. Okay, on to pool 3 then. Oh, so this is the one for just both me and you, Ben. So Edinburgh, 3 from 4, with the only one being a narrow loss down in Gloucester. Only 60 points scored isn't that many, especially because you scored most of them against Black Lion yesterday. How do you think Edinburgh got
on? Pretty well, I think. And I'm looking at the bracket that we've got. I mean, we've got Lions for round of 16, so obviously Alan and I can have a bit of a rivalry in April when that comes up, and then we play the winner of Bayonne on Bulls, and we comfortably beat Bayonne at home. So I'd expect us to do the same. So we've got an automatic home run until at least the semi-finals, depending on how Montpellier get on with their sort of side of the draw. It's pretty good, and I think we today in particular we blooded some youth. Lewis Wells played his first game on the wing. He's really good, different type of winger. I think kind of between sort of Darcy Graham's kind of guile and craft and Duan van der Merwe's pace and strength. He was kind of more in the Duan van der Merwe mold. That was a mouthful. The Darcy Graham's kind of type of play, but yeah, he played very, very well. And apart from Magnus Bradbury, sort of, it was a red card. It was a bit of a silly, very upright. Ben Healy got very lucky with his actually in the second half, and I think referee did mitigate that one down. I think maybe there was a bit of a dip, but the dip was very marginal. I think a ref on another day might have given that as a red too, and that would have left us up a bit of an issue going into the next couple of rounds against losing our back row and one of our fly halves. But I'm pretty confident with this, and I looked at the group and I thought we should get through. I just didn't expect us to win the group. I think Gloucester let themselves down massively with their
It's mad that Gloucester finished 4th. In my head, they've been amazing. Well, not amazing, you know what I mean. They're good in the Challenge Cup.
Were they in the final last year?
Yes, I think they've won it more than anybody. I think they've been in 5 finals. They love a bit of Challenge Cup, Gloucester do.
Yeah, they do tend to do quite well. But I think it was just important for us because although we lost to Leinster at home, we haven't lost a home game since. And I think teams do find it very, very difficult coming to the Hive and pulling out a result. And we've seen that for quite a few seasons. Just our away form has been poor. But with that run that we've got and the structure of the round of 16 through to the final, we've got a chance. I think looking at the teams that are left, I think I'd give any team coming to the Hive, I think they'd find it difficult. I think we could probably pull off a win. So I'm quite confident in that. I think it's probably worth going for. I think with our position in the URC kind of sitting at the edge of the top 8, 8th, 9th at the moment, I think Challenge Cup is probably the best opportunity for silverware for definitely this season and probably for a few seasons to come, because we don't have that strength and depth to really go for a top 4 in the URC and certainly get anywhere near a semi-final or a final. So I think if I was Sean Everett, and I hope he would really start to think very seriously about this being a tournament worth challenging for. Because
on that point, sorry Ben, on that point,
Well,
I think that's the same for the South African teams. I think the standard of the opposition means that the South African teams would favour the Challenge Cup as well. I think the fact that, like you said, Huw, the Cheetahs got a draw and a win, the Lions actually got 2 wins. So I think is it the Bulls and the Sharks that have qualified for this now as well, also in 4th position, isn't it? So
you've all got away games,
yeah, they've all got away games. But I mean, I think once they get their head around the idea that okay, the standard of opposition is going to drop just a little bit. I wouldn't want to play back-to-back South African teams. So that's something Edinburgh would probably have to, do. They'd have to probably play in the Lions next. And then did you say they might be playing the Bulls?
It's Bayonne Bulls on the other side. So yeah, I think Bayonne not having a great season from memory. Is that fair to say?
They're good at home in the top 14. It depends, because in their away games in the Challenge Cup, they put out the B team. They didn't try.
I think the thing about the Bulls is that the Bulls have a big away win in them. We've seen that in the URC over the last couple of seasons. It's just whether they're going to save that energy for the URC itself, because they're in a really good spot, aren't they? So
I think the main thing to be conscious of is how long it is until that round of 16. It's just under 3 months. Like, a lot can change in that 3 months. The impact of the Six Nations, league games, where you are in the URC at the point of the European competition resumes. What are you going to be looking to go for at that point? So I think, squad rotation will be key then, and also just injuries as well that might arise. The next 3 months. There's a lot of rugby to be played until the round of 16 starts, at least. So obviously 5, 6 days. The South African teams have a bit more of a break. Obviously, there's a couple of games they need to catch up on during the Six Nations calendar, but there's still 5 or 6 URC games to go until the European rugby starts up again. So it'll be interesting to see how each club sits that sort of first weekend in April and what they decide they're going to prioritise, because I think it's very difficult unless you're Toulouse, Leinster, or Saracens, maybe with their squad depth, that you can't really prioritise both competitions anymore. I just don't think many teams have it in them, and in the Challenge Cup, I don't think any team really has the depth in them to go to challenge for both. So it'd be interesting where the Bulls are come April. If they're top 4, I think they might sort of just go, let's just send up a second string. And also another thing that might happen is who you playing the week before. Have you got a home game in Pretoria, Joburg, Cape Town, or are you actually a URC away? Are you on your away leg of the URC, like a couple of games before, a couple of games after?
Because that's what the Sharks have done this week, because they had this game.
They got Leinster next week, haven't they?
No, they got Cardiff.
Who's got Leinster then? Stormers have got Leinster. Yeah, that's maybe why Liverpool can outrun the crowd.
Okay, is that why? Oh, there you go then. Cool. Right.
But it's just the one game and then it's Six Nations, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So a word on Black Lion. They might be in the URC one day. Both Scarlets.
Up today, didn't they? Yeah.
Both Scarlets and Edinburgh played against them. The score lines, I think, did them a bit of disservice. I think they're all right. I think they look comfortable at Challenge Cup level. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And also, once a team gets a spot in a competitive league, they're going to have the finance to start to get a better team. We need a representative team for the Georgian national team, a bit like Benetton and Zebra have been before, more Benetton for Italy. But insofar as that, you need them to be playing regular rugby. And, Georgia really are making some effort to get into the Six Nations at the expense of Italy. And that's kind of been an ongoing rumbling story that's been for quite some time now, because they are starting to beat the Tier 1 nations. So I think it's a good thing that instead of losing all their best players, whether they go to Saracens or URC or top 14, is that if you've got a club there that's been well funded, then play for your club team. If you've got a league that's going to be competitive to push that potential through and give them a foothold into a stronger league. I think it would be a good thing. Again, just with any league, it's just restructuring. It's having the space to accept more teams. An odd number of teams in a league can often be quite difficult to accommodate and plan for. But
hold that. we have an extra has joined us. It's that Kalen. The C has joined.
Good evening,
Hello,
Huw. Good
Kalen.
evening. Gents,
How you
it's
doing?
good to be on. Apologies, it's European week. It's a busy time of year. There's all that, but I'm delighted to be here to talk about Van and Black Lion, I assume.
Have you just come from a wedding with MC in a wedding with that microphone?
No, actually, I am back at my home house today, and this is the only one that's there. So,
Just
but
waving it around like karaoke.
yeah, absolutely. I might just do this for the duration.
Makes no difference to the audio though. That's nice.
No, it sounds good.
So, so we were just saying the Black Lion are quite decent, basically. Scarlets, then 2 wins out of 4. The defeat out in Gloucester, over in Gloucester, which I was there for. You can find the vlog of it on this YouTube channel. Disappointing.
You all seem pretty chipper at that loss, though, you have to say.
Well, the day out, it was a good night out, and I think the scoreline does us a bit of a disservice. I spoke to someone at the Scarlets afterwards who said that scoreline doesn't reflect the game. Two of Gloucester's tries were very lucky, but disappointing. And Van, we were 31-0 up at half time, and it's ended 38-28. And if we'd have kept just one of their tries out, we'd have had a home tie. We'll get on to who's playing who in the round of 16 in a minute, but all right. I think acceptable is how I define that. The Scarlets themselves said that their target was to get knockout rugby in the Challenge Cup this season, and they've achieved that. And I think there's no more really to say about it. It's just our squad is suddenly starting to look a bit thin, and it will do that based on how many players we've had called up for Wales. The entire 11 to 15 that started yesterday has been called up to Wales.
Oh,
So
right. That's good.
It's good, but it means that we're not going to be players left. But yeah,
You just have more players come back to your team with a wooden spoon, I think, at the rate it's going.
we'll come back injured knowing Gatland, but yeah.
Is that the tone I have to reach tonight? Because that's harsh, Ben. I know, like, Edinburgh won, but like, remember Glasgow lost as well.
I tell you what, it says a lot about Welsh rugby that a Scotland fan is giving me stick and I'm not rising to it. That's how bad it is. Like 2 years
I'd
ago,
say
I'd
the
have
same
been
thing
like,
about
who
Irish
the hell are
fans.
you?
Like, we're more worried about we're more happy that Tuipulotu was out than, say, a certain English, like, which English player was ruled out there recently? I can't remember who. One of them,
Okay. And then on to pool. Hang on a minute. Oh, on the BBC website, they're all in the wrong order. So you got pool 1, pool 3, and pool 2. We're doing pool 2 now. So in this pool, we had Ospreys, Lions, and Dragons, along with Montpellier, Poe, and Newcastle Falcons. What a time to be alive. Go on then, Alan. Your team's in this one. 2 wins from 2. You've progressed, haven't you?
We're playing Edinburgh in the next round, Ben said. But I'm I haven't been able to watch any of these games. For some reason they don't show all the games.
Premier Sports has mucked up this year with that Challenge Cup coverage. They've only picked 2 out of the 9 games over a weekend this weekend, and it was 3 or 4 for the other round. So it's been a bit of a letdown, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. So I would have liked to have watched the Lions. I think they're obviously my team, and I'm happy that they've qualified for this. And I think Ben gave me a bit of a run through earlier as to what all the permutations of these games were, because I wasn't 100% sure what the situation was with the. But I was I'm pretty happy with the fact that at least 3 South African teams have qualified for the Challenge Cup. So that's something. And up until the Sale won their game, the Stormers could have qualified for the Challenge Cup as well. So I think, like I said, with the standard of opposition, I think this is one that the South Africans will definitely take, on board. I feel optimistic playing Edinburgh next, and I think the Lions did okay. I think they're obviously a lot stronger at home, and they're obviously a lot weaker when they go away from home. And that seems to be the story with South African teams, really. So, I mean, it's kind of as expected, really, from a Lions point of view. But I can't really complain much. I think they've done, pretty well to get where they are at the moment, and there's still lessons to be learnt. But onwards and upwards, pretty happy to qualify for the next round.
Yeah, I think another team that'll be happy will be the Ospreys. 3 wins from 4. The victory out in Po, by all accounts, was very inspiring. Obviously undefeated since Mark Jones took over, since Toby Booth left, which is interesting. But yeah, I obviously I haven't seen any of the game against Po, but from what I saw against Newcastle, they made heavy weather of it when you consider that Newcastle lost at home to the Dragons. That's how poor Newcastle are. But they did seem to be changing a bit how they play. Now, they did score off transitions, but I need to watch them a bit more. But it does seem like they have gone, no, okay, we do need to play a bit differently. Obviously, a very disappointing first half of the season, as we covered whenever it was in the last round of the URC. But the 3 wins from 4, putting aside the heavy defeat to Montpellier, I think the Ospreys would be very happy with that, and they've obviously got a home tie in the next round. Dragons aren't through, are they? I'm just
No,
checking.
No.
they're fit. Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very tough times for the Dragons at the moment. I won't labor on it too much. I think the Dragons pod is going to be recording tonight as well, which you can find on this channel. Bless Jamie and Gav who do that. They do a great job considering what they have to talk about. And yeah, I think that defeat away to the Lions, the 60 points they took, I think everybody saw it coming. I think that's the sad thing about
I
that.
just want to on that, Hugh. I just want to say that if you look at the actual score, the actual pool standings, the actual home advantage for the Lions is obviously quite significant, isn't it? If you look at the amount of tries they scored, the amount of the points difference compared to everyone else, it looks like a lot of the factors put them like a second. I mean, the amount of tries scored, they were 18 and the Montpellier were 19. So home advantage for the Lions is obviously a massive factor, and I don't think anybody would want to go there. It's just a case about we need to try and win another game to put us higher in the standings and stuff. So we're not always having to travel away for these games.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, are you okay to share the screen for the round of 16? Have you got it open?
I have, but I don't know how to do it because
There
I've
should
got
be
it
a
on my
green
laptop.
button at the bottom of the Zoom window that says share.
I won't be able to do it.
Oh, you're on your phone. Okay, never mind.
I have it here. If you just
I
give
can
me
go through
two moments there, I have the Challenge Cup. Because I'm literally just after hopping off. Okay, if you just give me 2 minutes and segue for a second, and I will get it up for you.
Okay.
What I would say, sorry about the Ospreys pool, is that like just to build on what Alan was saying, is that they were -5 and conceded more tries than they scored and still finished second. It's quite bizarre sort of combination
Yeah.
in their league in their
Obviously,
pool.
that Montpellier game kind of skews things. That was such a awful result that I think it kind of casts a bit of a cloud over the stats and things. But obviously, they've turned it around, so fair play to them. Okay.
Yeah. I think Ospreys dark horses, to be honest. I know that you won't want to hear that, Hugh, but I think they've got I think they've got an opportunity.
Yeah, they don't have tons of pedigree in knockout rugby. They've only won one knockout game in the history, but why not the second one be against the Scarlets, I guess. So thank you for sharing the screen, Kaylin. The EPCR round of 16.
It's in the wrong order just because I have it up and I just moved it down to enhance it, that kind of way.
So Connacht host Cardiff again. Montpellier play Glasgow. We're not interested. Edinburgh v Lions, which you've spoken about. Ospreys versus Scarlets. Lions. Leon versus Sharks. Well, the Sharks are a team that we've not spoken about yet. I kind of feel like if it's away from home, the Sharks aren't going to do anything this season.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
it
very
depends. It depends on
frustrating.
whether they turn up. But yeah, go on.
They are extremely frustrating to watch, the Sharks. I think the game today was really frustrating, but I think there's potential there. It's just the small, there's always those fine details like body position going into contact, the holding onto the ball. But probably the most frustrating South African team to watch is the Sharks because nothing typifies our performances in these competitions more than them, and that includes the URC. Like it's completely hit and miss with them, and it shouldn't be. It's a complete anomaly how they managed to pull out some of these results and lose them, and then other games they're winning. So it's really Very, very frustrating from a Sharks point of view.
Probably worth noting as well, they're in the same side of the draw as Connacht, where I think if the Sharks decide, you know what, we're going to try and go back to back in the Challenge Cup, they've no reason to fear Leon, I feel like, because on paper, they've no reason to fear anyone in this competition. But anyways, that's beside the point. Like Osprey Scarlets, they know how to beat them. Connacht Cardiff, they know how to beat them. It's just about whether they decide to go for that or target the URC, where they're going to have more, home games. They obviously have a game in hand, and they're already in prime position. Look, selfishly, from a Irish point of view, I hope they don't target it, because I think they're the biggest challenge to Connacht getting to a final. But it should be interesting. I can see them looking at this and going, well, we've done it before, let's do it again.
I personally can't see them targeting. Plumtree came out and had some comments about squad depth, and John Dobson came out and said
I think that Plumtree needs to just watch his mouth, frankly, on that.
Especially a man who might be on F watch and not the F bomb that people are thinking.
Yeah. And then Dobson said it as well. He said, the URC is our bread and butter. So until we become European, partners with you guys at the end of the season, I think we need to be very careful, about what the coaches are saying. I mean, even Etzebeth came out afterwards and kind of contradicted slightly what Plumtree was saying. But
it was good. I think even Etzebeth probably is more powerful in that Sharks dressing room than Plumtree at the moment. Anyway, thank you for sharing, Caelan.
No worries. I will stop that there, producer, host.
So just if you are enjoying what you're seeing so far, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have already subscribed, you probably noticed that there is a lot of podcasts on this channel. So if you fancied ever being a podcast host or guest, let us know in the comments. There's a few podcasts that we've got knocking around that only have two people on it. We like 3 or 4 is a good number. I think everyone will agree. So if you did fancy it, it doesn't matter what team you support, where you're from, we will find a place for you somewhere on one of the 1 million podcasts that we do. We have mostly Welsh podcasts, but we're open to setting up new ones about whoever volunteers. So let us know in the replies or contact us on Twitter. What are we at URC Podcast on Twitter? The link will be in the description down below.
URC Rewind, was it URC Rewind? United Rugby Rewind. That's the one.
Yeah, all the links will be in the description box down below. And hopefully we'll get to speak to you.
Yeah, more South Africans, guys. Come on.
Or a Leinster fan.
Less Irish people.
Yeah. We've got one Irish.
That is unfair. But I'll let it go. But that is unfair.
Okay, let's talk about the Champions Cup now that we have main event Caelan with us. So I'm going to share the screen and we'll go through the pools again like we did just for the Challenge Cup. So Pool Un was topped by Bordeaux in the end, followed closely by Toulouse. Then was Leicester Tigers, then Ulster being the URC team ahead of the Sharks, who we've just spoken about, and then Exeter down at the bottom. Oh, it's a good job that we're not an English podcast, otherwise we'd have things to say about
Leicester should be kicked out for that game today. That was embarrassing.
It was appalling. And the thing is,
expunged, whatever word we're going to use, it was terrible.
It's called a business decision, Ben.
I appreciate.
But I wanted to watch a decent game, and that wasn't a business decision move for me. Would have not been that as a paying subscriber to Premier Sports. I was very, very disappointed.
I can see why all those English people got so upset about having to pay 10 quid a month to watch that. To be honest with you, but oh my goodness, like 80 in top flight of rugby. But anyway, that's. Moving on from that, Ulster is the one team that we haven't spoken about, and Caelan they've progressed having won one game, which was against arguably the worst team in pro rugby at the moment in Exeter. To be honest, we were obviously in the group chat whilst that game was going on, and if you look at the scoreline, you say, "Oh, Ulster tonked them," but Ulster were rubbish for moments in that game. It's just not clicking for Ulster this season. I know we're not doing a review of the whole season, but sticking to the Champions Cup, I think. I'm going to be overly mean, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong. Is this the worst performance from a team that has ever earned them knockout rugby?
Yes, 100%, and they shouldn't go through. It's as simple as that. They're going to get battered by Bordeaux away. They will, because they get to play them again, so good luck. They're not going to win.
I see your point, just remember that, the Leicester had already qualified, only really beating, Stormers who didn't travel and Ulster injury hit. I think to Ulster's credit, I think what you're starting to see an awful lot is obviously that tight five needs signings, and I think we've spoken on here about signing Joanna Augustus and how he will improve them next year because he's a big heavy hitter. But I think as much as anything else, like that Ulster backline is just littered with injuries. Rob Little, for anyone who doesn't know this, they might recognise the name Rob Little from watching Ulster in years gone by. He hadn't played for Ulster for almost 2 years to the day when he came on Friday night. He had retired from pro rugby. He actually has a big farm, I believe, and went back farming and playing All Ireland League rugby, which followers of Hugh's old podcast might remember. He used to do a little wrap up of the All Ireland League.
Yeah.
But he'd left the game. But because Ulster have so many injuries, including Rob Balakoon, Jacob Stockdale, Werner Koch went off injured in this game, Ethan McElroy, James Hume, Stuart McCluskey. There's 4 internationals there? 5 internationals there?
Yeah, 5.
Yeah.
They had Rob Little came in, played 70 something minutes. That's the position Ulster are in right now. And I think that's what's holding them back, especially when you can talk about, we might talk about Jordy Barrett later, we might talk about Peter O'Mahony or Tyke Byrne later. Stuart McCluskey is just that for Ulster as well. He has been that man for years. And I think since his injury in particular, they haven't looked the same, to be quite honest. Obviously they were in a poor run before that, but he had missed some time as well before the November. So it's not a great position to be in. And yes, it's not a great result, but at the same time you can never rule out the magnitude of just getting a big win when you've been losing every game. They had won one game in 6 before this, something like that. Had 2 tonkings. Look, they've a favourable, to go back to the URC, they have a favourable run to come, and I'd like to just judge them on March, to be honest, or even April. I don't know.
Yeah.
2 rounds after the Six Nations. They
did turn it on in that final 20 against Exeter. They did. It was nice to see them play with smiles on their faces. I thought Cooney had a good impact off the bench, and Cormac Izichukwu is a hell of a player. He's a hell of a player. And
he's my starting 6 for Ireland in the Six Nations. And
I'm not against that. I also wouldn't be against him being on the bench just because I think Ireland's bench has lacked impact, and I think he is impact.
That's my second. That's the other side of the brain.
But he absolutely has to be involved for me. And without this just becoming my weekly bit, he is enormous. He's huge. Like, it's ridiculous how big he is.
6'8", 120 odd kilos. And he didn't even play. And I think what's really impressive, and I'll nerd out here for a second, he didn't play second row growing up. He played a lot of centre because he was so athletic, so quick. But when you watch him play, he actually has better tight contact work than a lot of second rows, which I find fast. Like, he has a real want to get in, and to say it in the simplest terms possible, get in and hit lads. He really enjoys the physicality, and I do enjoy watching him. I'm delighted he got that hat trick and got that big performance right before Ireland selection, because so often the guys who are on the periphery don't get that game, and especially in a team in Ulster's form. I'm delighted for him because he's had a very meteoric rise, but before that it was very slow. So I do hope it's a sign of more to come.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of him. I think he's fantastic. And I was Ulster fans. I was being deliberately overly mean. I'm sorry. Ben wasn't. Ben hates you, but I was being mean.
I don't hate them. I think it's just
yeah.
It's just reflective of the poor structure of the competition. I've raised it before. There shouldn't be a round of 16 in either tournament, and people that finish 5th in the Champions Cup shouldn't get a second opportunity in the Challenge Cup. I don't understand it. I think when we should be playing less rugby, this is the perfect opportunity. And it does take away from the enjoyment of the competition. There was very little jeopardy. Teams are just playing for home ties. That's what it felt like. It didn't really feel like there was a lot riding on a lot of the match. Not really. I don't think it just didn't feel like there was much. It felt very damp and dour, really, just very uninspiring. And I think get rid of a round of 16 and go to a quarter final and have it that way. I think teams going through winning 1 out of 4 matches, whoever that is, I don't think it's a good way of advertising a knockout competition. I
think to be fair, it's been a better pool stages than it was the recent years. If you take Pool A aside, because obviously you have 2 teams who are so far ahead and put 50 points on everyone, apart from that, I actually think it's been more balanced. Like we just seen Cast. I know they're not in our jurisdiction. Cast went and won in Saris. Munster Northampton was one of the games, the pool stages, in both in the same pool. Glasgow's pool was super, super competitive, which we kind of expected from the outcome. And
Yeah, yeah.
Leinster's pool, like Benetton should have beaten Bristol. If they did, they'd have a home knockout game.
Let's talk about
You know,
Benetton now. So
yeah.
let's talk about that pool now. So we'll start with Benetton because I always feel like we always do a disservice to the Italian teams on this pod. So Benetton, 2 wins from 4, but won both of their home games, a win over Bath, current top in the English League, and a win over La Rochelle. So
Which was fantastic. That was a brilliant game.
Both
Yeah.
at
That was
home as well.
amazing. Yeah.
And you're right, I agree with you, Caelan. They should have beaten Bristol. They got unlucky there. So just great to see. And do you think this is because I think this is the first time an Italian team has qualified for the knockout stages of the top cup competition? Is this a moment? Is this a kind of, because we ranked Benetton pretty harshly in our URC mid-season review. So what have you made of what they've been able to string together? You know, is this finally the quality of that squad starting to show?
Yeah, beating La Rochelle yesterday is massive. I think to beat a French team and a La Rochelle team who have been dominant, utterly dominant in European rugby for quite some time, along with Toulouse, I think, yeah, that shows some real strides in terms of maximising the potential of their squad. I think the URC has been disappointing, but yeah, and I think Castaway, anything could happen in that round of 16 game. So yeah, I think Benetton can be really pleased with how they played yesterday. Negri was outstanding. He did a passion on his face. When I think they got a turnover very late on yesterday when La Rochelle were down in Coffin Corner, just showed how much how much they were up for that game yesterday, and to get a win was amazing for them. I think, and any Benetton fan would be probably one of the best wins in a long time for them. I think in terms of what that means to them going into a knockout stage of the Premier competition, which, like you say, they've never been in before, never got to before, or certainly not recently. So yeah, I think.
Shout
very,
out
very good.
Albanos as well, one of my favourite players. Brought his kicking boots in this game. He left them very much on the plane against Bristol. But yeah, I think everyone seems really desperate to believe that La Rochelle is still one of the top teams, and I've watched them all season. I really don't think they are. I really think that they have passed their sell by date as a team. Personally, as
They've come
well.
off the cliff.
Let's talk about Leinster, Caelan. Look, flattered to deceive in the first rounds. The defense is good. I love Jacques Nunaber when he gets asked about stats and defense and attack. And he got asked about it, I think, before this game. He said, well, we're conceding fewer points than we did last year, and we're scoring the same. So that sounds like better to me. And you can't disagree with him. If you're really a rugby nerd, Leinster's defense is amazing to watch. But finally, in this Bath game, their attack was decent to watch as well.
Yeah, I think it's. I literally just came off the podcast there, and I was chatting with a Leinster fan, and I did give them the rope insofar as we can't blame Leinster for, okay, you beat everyone out the gates, you weren't tested, and also say, well, you got tested, you're obviously not as good. You have to add context to both arguments if you're going to keep going down that path. I think to Leinster's credit, they have been tested this year. I think the La Rochelle game was as close to test rugby as you'll get in this competition, this side of April. I think Bath gave them a good test, and then invariably kind of the wind fell out of them a small bit. Away from home, never really done it before against Leinster. A couple of strange refereeing calls. I'm not going to go into it. I think it was just yeah, it was just a couple of strange calls. I don't think it was a great weekend or a great 2 weeks for World Rugby's kind of, they always review these things in December. We all, like, it's an open secret. I don't think it's been a great 2 weeks in general for that. But to be fair to Leinster, they're starting to hit their groove now, and I think ultimately they're at the point now where the only thing that really matters is May. Like, they probably have top spot all but sewn up in the URC. They've got a top seeding here. They can just coast, and if they can get over the line in the URC and Champions Cup, that's all that matters. And that was always the case. But I think now you have a little bit more room for optimism after the last 2 weeks, because these are the two best proper tests they've gotten so far, especially that La Rochelle game. and the first half against Bath, and they've come out swinging, haven't they?
They have, and I think the scary thing about them is that I don't think they're close to peaking, and I actually don't think they're trying to peak. I think, like, exactly as you said, they're aiming to peak in April, May, and this is them kind of building to that. As well as the defense yesterday, I really enjoyed watching Henshaw, Ringrose, and Barrett all interchanging in the centres and the wings and things. I thought that
Can I ask you a
was
question on
really
that,
good.
Hugh? Because you
Yeah.
are neutral and I'm not, and I'm biased on this one because Robbie Henshaw grew up like 20 minutes up the road from me. But if you were in Simon Easterby's shoes, I was about to say Andy Farrell and I stopped myself. If you're in Simon Easterby's shoes, who's your Ireland starting pair in the Six Nations for the first week? Because I think Henshaw's playing too well not to start.
Ooh, that's such a great question. Thing about Ringrose is he's a thoroughbred 13, and I'm a sucker for them. A good 13 is one of my favorite types of players.
You are a Scarlets fan after all.
Yeah, but I can't really recall Aki and Henshaw playing together and it not working. Um,
Or the last time Robbie Henshaw didn't look very good. He's been in great form since what, the Argentina game?
mm, if you flip it around, I guess, who's the most, if you say that Ireland's biggest issue has been impact from the bench, who's the most impactful off the bench? It'd be Bundy Aki, in my
Mm.
opinion. So,
I think it depends on where you go at 10 as well. And I won't get into it tonight because obviously you were taking barbs at me online as well about that. But I won't get into it tonight. But if they go with Jack Crowley on the bench, they're more likely to go 6-2. And Jack Crowley can cover 12 and 15 if they go with Sam
exactly,
Prendergast off the bench.
that's a
Ringrose
really
makes
good
more
point
sense
as well.
because we know we can cover the wing and so on.
That's a good point as well, because I was thinking about that today as well, is would you start Crowley and then move him back to 12 when Prendergast comes on? But in that robs the centre space as well. So I guess it depends on the wingers.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
James
this
Lowe
is
is still a knock, but we'll talk about that in
yeah.
the
Talk about that another time.
times.
Something that I do want to talk about is that fifth and sixth in this pool, Bath and Bristol, top two in the English Premiership. What's the film where the quote is this your God or whatever? What's that from? Like, the English have stunk out this Champions Cup pool stage. It's been embarrassing to watch.
Yeah, but they still have the same amount of like. Look, I'm not here defending English. Don't get me wrong, but they still have the same amount of teams in the knockouts as the as the URC, and the
But only
URC
one
has
of the
only
five
one
are at
extra
home
home
tie,
game.
though. They're all the lowest seeds, though.
Yeah, but then it's like two home games in the URC to come, two home games or one home game in the
But
Premiership.
look at the score lines, though.
Oh yeah, no, I don't disagree.
And
I'm
the
not
way that, because
disagreeing. I'm just playing
obviously,
devil's
like,
advocate.
living in England, I don't know, Ben or Alan, whether you have noticed this, but no one's bothered. Like,
No.
their teams, like Leicester. What happened to Leicester today? I read the BBC report. Leicester aren't even mentioned in it. They talk about how
No.
amazing Toulouse are. They don't talk about Leicester.
I live in
Like,
Bristol, and there's nothing. There's no one. No one is talking about it. Nobody, nobody. It's like ridiculous. Like, and Bristol have got an amazing stadium. It's right up the road from Bath. So you'd think there'd be some sort of, like, affection but it just doesn't.
But
yeah,
this
They're
is
more
kind of
interested
been
in the lady who signed for Bristol.
Alone and
Alone and
Alone
Mar.
and
Mar.
There's more news on that than anything else. So,
And now TikTok's banned, but that's an entirely different
back
conversation
now.
for a different podcast.
Coming back
But
tomorrow once Trump's inaugurated.
yeah, so the plan is. But just kind of on that, like I think this has kind of been the way in English rugby or in Premiership rugby since about 2019, because when Saracens were in their pomp, it's easy to forget they were the only English team properly competing at the time as well. But it was
Exeter won
swept
it in
under the carpet.
2020.
Yeah, and like Exeter won in 20, but Exeter kind of came in had like they never really got back. They got back to a semi-final 2 years ago, weirdly, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Like they've only ever really had one, maximum two teams competing, and I think it's kind of like the URC in so far as generally you're going to have 4 or 5 proper competitors from France, and 2 or 3 each from the other two leagues. But the only difference is, we don't really talk about it because we don't expect, the Scarlets to compete every year or Glasgow to compete every year or whatever. It's just about who goes on a run.
As an outsider, I mean, like, as a South African, I think I've always perceived it as a French and Irish dominated competition. And I know going back another 15, 20 years, it was probably maybe different. And, back when Wasps and whoever else were winning it. But it's always felt like French and Irish dominated competition. I think the English are probably viewing it not too dissimilar to the South Africans because of the issues, the financial issues they've had over the last couple of years. They probably just think we probably don't have the money, and they're probably more worried about keeping their league running or looking for alternative leagues or methods of keeping them alive as opposed to going up and trying to win another competition. They were pretty relieved to get rid of relegation. So that was the big thing for a few years, wasn't it? Let's get rid of relegation.
Even though that was the selling point a few years before that, which is kind of the irony. It's like the Premiership's so much better. We've got relegation, and it's like,
Yeah,
we
it
don't
was
have relegation. It's so much more competitive. It's like,
It was we've got relegation that makes it better, and then they got rid of that, and then it was we see the best start. We see the top players play every single week, and then they got rid of that, and now it's just we're close to each other. So
4 out of 5 games they're live on TNT Sports.
It's all 5 now. It's all 5 now.
No, stop.
It's not quite all 8 like we have it in some leagues, but but
or some free-to-air games as they have in the most
I
successful
think
rugby nation.
your point about keeping that league going, and I know we've gone off on a big tangent here. I think that's the reason why no one in England is talking about their teams getting hosed, because if they had that conversation, then it's just going to do more damage. They'd rather just not talk about it and then wait for the Premiership to come back around again than go, our teams are getting absolutely humiliated week in, week out in this tournament, and it's because the players aren't very good. It's because
that's the South African attitude as well, I would say. I think we're getting rinsed, and the Bulls sitting there, all the talk, Jake White, these players, and then you're looking up the league and you're looking at like Ulster, Benetton, these teams qualifying, and they're like bottom of their league. In Pretoria, that doesn't go down well. The Sharks, that's not going to cut it,
Yeah. So the Bulls then, like 1 win from 4, it's disappointing.
And that was the last game. And I said to my wife, if they can, I think were they playing Bordeaux? Was it Bordeaux they were playing?
Stade Francais.
Stade Francais. I said the second last game was away in France, wasn't it? And who were they playing?
I want to say it was
they'd cast away, and then
I
they'd
said
stand
to
at home.
the Bulls have this history of getting to just on the precipice of like knockout rugby, and then they scrape a win, and then I said if they get the last game of the season of this round, and they need to get like a 60 or a 70 point win, then there's a chance, because they've done this before in Super Rugby to the Crusaders, and they've done it to the Reds. They need a game, and they need like a 50-point gap. They will do it in Pretoria, but then they went and lost that game, and then they proceeded to thrash Stade Francais the next week. It's like it's too late. But I'm sure that the Bulls and the Sharks are going to go to the coaches and say, you guys, you have to do better than this, because the teams that are qualifying for this competition are they're good. They're good, but they'll want more.
So, Kaylin, obviously, if we use this as a segue into Munster chat, it felt like no one in Pool 3 was that flash. Munster 2 wins from 4, but I haven't seen any of this game, but most of the reaction online seems to be that Munster played well in that game. What was your take on it?
It was I said this yesterday, and I said it today as well, chatting to different people. I think if La Rochelle Leinster doesn't happen the week before, I think this is the game of the pools. It was just really, really fun, and like that is fine every once in a while. Look, as a Munster fan, my heart was beating out through my chest. You know what I mean? I think it was loud enough to fuel a lot of places. But for Munster, you're right to say that no one was really that flash. Northampton were brilliant for 3 games, awful for an hour against Stade Francais, and that cost them a top seeding. Like if they beat Stade Francais, even by a point, they're top 2 seed. So it did really, really cost them in the end. Cast were like, there's nothing more cast than having a points difference of just 19 despite winning three games, and winning one of those by like 2 of those by like a score.
Yeah, shock win for them at Saracens. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, like a real shock. Mark McCall apparently came out and said after the game, it's probably their biggest game in their club's history, despite the fact they'd been in the European semi-final.
Mark McCall.
Yeah, exactly. For Munster, for the Bulls, first of all, before I go back to Munster, I think the Bulls, this is disappointing. Anytime they lose in Pretoria, it's a disappointment, especially against a team who'd never played a game in South Africa. I think, and like they were poor that day. I think with the exception of like, I think it was Hanekom who was brilliant against Northampton, but he was a one-man band that day. And then for Munster, it's almost similar insofar as Munster could very easily be looking at this pool 4-0 and with a home knockout tie because like they lost their 2 games by a combined 4 points. Do you know, it's not like they were abysmal in any game, but ultimately,
Yeah, conceded the fewest points of anyone in the pool.
yeah, exactly. And like the best defense, and even though they conceded 5 tries yesterday, like nearly half of their points came from one game. Do you know what I mean? And like I think the Cass game, there was a lot of injuries. It got bitty. That probably happens with or without the injuries. But yesterday, I do think is where you've seen, you know, not having Alex Stankovic in there, not having Shane Daly in there, it did start to take a toll. Despite the fact Jack Crowley was excellent, Tyke Byrne was Tyke Byrne. Like there's
Yeah, he was
literally no other
outstanding
way of
yesterday.
describing him.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic yesterday. Just that shuffle in that first half. You know, he's just got this poise and guile and sort of assuredness that I think he's, you know, one of the best second rows in the Northern Hemisphere, if not, you know,
I think
across
he's
across the spectrum. I think
for
he's
me
up
it's
there.
him and Etzebeth is the best two in the world. But I'm obviously biased, don't get me wrong, but for me it's them two. And as well as that, we're never
But
going
he
to get
never
an
gets
all-star
anything
game,
wrong.
but
Like he doesn't make errors. That's the thing. Like every decision he makes seems to be the right decision, depending on the circumstances. Like you just don't see him pick
and he's a
the
man for big
do the
moments
wrong thing.
too. Like
Yeah, I was about to say
you
that.
can
He
say
always
it.
turns up. You never think, is Ty Burn playing? He's
You
always at
know
the
he's
forefront
there.
of everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Phenomenal
that's it.
play.
And like, look, it's this one, but Munster go to La Rochelle. I will not be able to get tickets. I'm entirely honest here, but I have booked it. I will be going to La Rochelle for the weekend, and it's going to be a very cool experience. But La Rochelle Stadium is tiny,
Yeah,
and we
you're
won't
not
get tickets.
you're not going to be
So
able to get in, unfortunately. But it's
no,
hopefully it'll be a nice day out.
there's a lot of Munster fans traveling for that one. I think it's just because
I
if you've
hope they
any
all
excuse to
stand
go to La Rochelle,
outside. I hope they all just stand outside the stadium, like
yeah.
just just silently. Hashtag respect. Pool 4 then. So the URC representatives in this were Glasgow and Stormers, amongst combining 2 words there. Toulon, Sale, Harlequins, and Racing 92. Jeez, this was an inspiring pool, wasn't it? Ben, Glasgow disappointing in the end, really.
Disappointing last night, very much so.
I'd say disappointing in the end. I think losing by 1 point away in Toulon is no shame in that, and obviously won the
No,
2 home games, but ended on a bit of a damp squib.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think yesterday's performance was pretty poor. I know, Caelan, we were loath to you know go on about officiating over the last 2 weekends, but there was a really poor decision yesterday. I think one of the Harlequin balls came massively in from the side, picked the ball up and ran off. The ball clearly wasn't out, and the rest looking over it, I couldn't believe it wasn't given. And the game was pretty
You know,
finally,
it's obvious when
pulled
I'm
up.
agreeing with Ryan Wilson.
Yeah, well, exactly. Uh, you know, Munster antipathy towards Ryan Wilson is not that, you know, not really secret, is it? So yeah, I think Glasgow points difference is only 11. They conceded a lot of points in this tournament. I think see that it was a very open pool. I think looking at the teams in there. I think any of the teams could have gone through, to be honest, and that's nearly the case, I suppose. You know, no, everyone did win a game. Stormers can be quite disappointed with their, you know, position they ended up, but obviously didn't place much focus on this. But yeah, I think Glasgow, it was okay. I think they were fine in parts. Yesterday, Tom Jordan played really well, sort of towards the end of the first half, but second half it was just poor. I think, and I think a lot of fans I saw on social media weren't particularly happy with the performance either. Just felt like we're kind of cruising second half, and then they're already through, and probably, you know, we're going to have a home tie, whatever happened. So yeah, again, just the issue with the structure of the competition is that it just doesn't encourage teams to continue playing, which I think is probably what happened last night. But
The loss of
Yeah.
Tui Pilato probably needs to be mentioned there.
yeah,
Like, don't get me
yeah,
wrong,
agreed. Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure if McDowell was at 12 because I was working last night as well. And I didn't really get to see much of it, but they have got really good centres, Glasgow do. But Tui Pilato is the world class one. And no
Yeah.
matter what way you change it, like, he is a world class player. I think he changes that game if he's there. Like, you talk about Tyke Byrne being a player for the big moments. Like, Tui Pilato, like that run last year when they went on to win the league, he was unstoppable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was the reason why. Yeah, yeah,
So.
and I think he'd be the reason why Glasgow would win either the URC or the Champions Cup again. It's a bit sort of murky about what's happened and how long he's going to be out for. Sort of rumours he might miss the Italy game and maybe the Ireland game. Hopefully, it's not that bad. But
Oh, yeah. Go
yeah,
on,
it could
Matt.
be one of those. And I mean, after Finn, he's our, he's the player that makes things happen in the backs. Like without him, do we move Jordan to 12 and have Finn at 10?
I just love Jordan so much. I'd play him anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player. I mean, obviously, he had his run at fullback against the Springboks November test, but I think Tupelotu is irreplaceable. He's like Finn, I think, and Xander Fakes, and those three. When one of those three get injured, I worry about the replacement because although they're good, they're not going to be great. And those are three very pivotal positions: tight head 10 and an inside centre. Because Sione, he makes things.
He's captain as well.
And he's captain. He makes things tick. He's a great communicator. He's very humble. He's the effort he exudes on a rugby pitch. Doesn't matter who he's playing. He will play 100%. That's him, and that's his personality. And it's someone that very proud to have in the Scotland setup. So yeah, I think if he's injured, it'll be a worry. I think it'll be a concern because I think, I know, not getting too ahead of ourselves, but I think Scotland got a really good opportunity this year in the Six Nations. I think the way the fixtures lie, we do have a chance, and I think Sione has to be part of that. But
even the South African has heard that before.
We've heard it before, but it just depends on that second game. I think that's the one that it all hinges on. Kind of like for Ireland, I think. I feel like the French game is the one. I think Ireland should have enough to beat England. For Scotland, if they don't turn over Ireland, you look at that French and English game a little bit differently. It's just because it's the game Gregor Townsend is yet to win, and until he does, like there's plenty of Irish people, and I'll be one of them who'll say it. Until Scotland prove they can beat Ireland specifically, Ireland have no reason to fear them.
Yeah,
like that's
well,
just
since Greg Laidlaw's kicked that late penalty, what's that, 28-17, I think it was, wasn't it? So that's about
6. What year do we play away from
17.
home?
So it was a home game. It definitely
Yeah.
be 2017.
2017.
Yeah,
So
it was 32-26. I think it was.
All right, we're not doing Six Nations chat.
Sorry.
Right.
But interestingly, for the knockout games, if Glasgow and Leinster win their games, it's Leinster Glasgow in Dublin, which will be a very good quarterfinal.
Which is also the last URC game of the season. So just saying,
going to be back to back.
Glasgow are having their 2017. As a Scarlets fan, 2017 is the best year that ever happened, and Glasgow are having theirs. There's a lot of parallels in my opinion. Alan, lastly, the Stormers. Will they be glad to be out of it secretly?
I think they will, but I do want to give them credit. I think their performances and even the points that they tried, and I think they got themselves into some good positions in some of the games. They didn't get thrashed to the extent that the other South African teams, and the points difference is only -16. The most frustrating thing about the Stormers was, we've said this before, you get into these positions where you're getting penalties, you're bringing on Frans Malherbe, you're picking up scrum penalties, you're kicking 5 meters from the line, and then you can't win a line out. Your mauling is all over the place. Like, that's South African bread and butter, really, isn't it? So, I think they'll be happy to be out of it. I think Dobson did say that, the URC is where it's at for them, and they don't have the squad depth to compete on both fronts, so that's okay. But yeah, same as all the other South African teams, really. But just at times, for all your effort and the exertion they're putting in, a little bit more reward, calmer heads. And it's not for lack of trying that they're losing these games, but yes, I think at the end of the day, pretty relieved to be done with this competition. And I think they're playing. Did you say they're playing in Europe next week? So take it from there and then get back to Cape Town and reset for the rest of the URC, really.
So if we look at the round of 16 for the Champions Cup, then Ulster away at Bordeaux, Munster away at La Rochelle. That's an interesting game.
So much narrative there in that one alone.
The story writes itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, Leinster host Harlequins, Glasgow host Leicester Tigers, and then Benetton away at Cast. Oh, it's unfortunate.
Glasgow Leicester for me is the game. Like, I like to take off my Irish hat for these ones. I think Glasgow Leicester is a really fun one because Leicester typically, like, I know what happened this weekend, whatever, but like, they're typically a team who pride themselves on Europe. Glasgow are typically a team who haven't got over the line in Europe, but if they do, they'll be fancying their chances in that one in particular.
And they got to beat Leicester. This is a must win.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it depends on how Scotland Six Nations goes to go back into that, because we've seen it before. Six Nations can affect Europe.
I don't, not with Papa Franco in charge, I don't think. I think he'll sort them out, what come what may. I think Benetton is unlucky that they've got to go away.
Yeah.
I think because if they had Castres at home, I'd say I'd back them to beat that. And even if they had one of Clermont or Northampton at home, I'd back them somewhat in that. So I think Benetton is a could, but probably won't. Whereas if they were at home, I'd say Benetton could get to a semi-final here, but where they would come up against Leinster. But I think Benetton's one to keep an eye on. Leinster shouldn't have any bother against Quins, honestly. So there's not much to discuss there. And La Rochelle Munster, I think, is an interesting game. And as we know, Munster are a different team post Six Nations to the whole rest of the year.
It's just power. Power is the big thing that scares me there, because like it's one of the things we talked about with Munster all season, but like that La Rochelle pack is massive. Even when they're not playing well, they're still massive. You know what I mean? And that's going to be an issue. But like, I can tell you what the narrative is going to be for Leinster Quins. It's going to be the battle of the tens. Whether you agree with it or not, that is going to be the narrative. Like, look, I would love a Finn Baxter, Andrew Porter conversation, because I think Finn Baxter is a really good scrummaging prop, but it's going to be the battle of the tens and the Lions year and whoever wins the Six Nations and so on and so forth.
If Lee Halfpenny plays in that game and he knocks Leinster out with a kick from his own 10-meter line, I will do this podcast in my pants.
All right, Gary Lineker.
And then, sorry, Ulster, but you're going to lose to Bordeaux. Sorry.
You don't need to say it. They know. It's fine.
Yeah. I feel like I've been mean to Ulster. I watched the previews of the season. I backed Ulster for big things. That's why I'm so angry, as I feel hurt and let down. But I will just say that Toulouse and Bordeaux are two generational teams. We're going to look back on this Toulouse-Bordeaux duo of teams in the top 14 for a long time. It's unbelievable. Right. If you're still listening or still watching, please consider liking and subscribing to the video and sharing a link with a friend who you think might enjoy it. Right. Let's talk about URC then. So it's back. It's back. And let's talk about it. So we're into round 10. So let's get in and amongst the fixtures coming up this weekend. So obviously it's kind of a bit of an in-betweeny weekend. And I think we mentioned it earlier in the pod, kind of the disruption to the season of we just had 2 weeks of Europe and then 1 week of this and then into the Six Nations is a bit, kind of takes the momentum from it a bit. But the first game is Ospreys versus Benetton. What are we seeing on that one, guys? It depends on what kind of team Benetton send, I think.
I think
we go with an Ospreys win for that.
Negretti will be missing, I think.
Say again, Ben?
I think Brex, Menoncello and Negri will be missing at least. So I think they're the backbone of that side. And I think going away, they accept that if you send a second string over and just probably hope for the best. I think Ospreys will probably win that game.
Yes, I probably agree. Glasgow versus Connacht. Should be routine enough for Glasgow.
You'd imagine so. Like, Glasgow will lose more players to Scotland camp, but Glasgow don't lose at home. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. So is anybody not backing Glasgow?
You'd be a brave man to bet against Glasgow and Scotland, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Lions versus Bulls. Oh, that's a big game. Alan?
Yeah, I think the Bulls will be up for that. I think Huerson is injured, so the Bulls will be better. So I think they could beat the Lions there. I hope the Lions win though, because they need to get back on track really. One more. I wasn't here for the the chat you guys had last time about the mayor and all that stuff where you're talking ranking your teams and how they're performing throughout the season. But I think the Lions are teetering. I think they need to win that game and get back on track, and that would be a big game to win for us.
The Bulls are teetering though as well. If the Bulls lose that, there is going to be some very difficult questions being asked. There already are, and it's going to be like they'll have lost, I don't know, 5 out of 6 or something. They'll be on a bad run if they lose that, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy people. Scarlets versus Edinburgh, Ben, Interpod derby. From a Scarlets fan, it's a must-win because we've won 5 games at home in a row. But those teams that we've beat is the Bulls, which is good, but then we've beat Zebra, Dragons, Black Lion, and Van after that. All not great teams. Now, obviously, Edinburgh yet to win away from home this season,
Apart from
apart from the
Van,
win in Van.
yeah,
What are you thinking? 6th versus 8th?
yeah, it's a pretty pivotal game, I think, to be honest. I think again, it depends on the squad we send down and who the SRU say we can play. Obviously, we've got less players in the Scotland team this year for obvious reasons. Obviously, Glasgow dominating that, and obviously, teams outside the URC providing quite a bit of talent, whether it was Kinghorn or other people. Rory Hutchinson being another in that sort of back line that might start the first game if top two blocker isn't available. So yeah, I think we might be able to send a relatively strong team down there, but I think it's certainly a game I'm looking at where if we really need to start winning away from home, this is a good opportunity to do that. So I know 2 years ago we got a bit of a pasting off you of memory. I think it was a 44 something get, like it was a good, I think you put 45 points on us. And yeah, I think I just doubt us away from home all the time at the moment. Even against Van last weekend, not fantastic, but managed to pull out an away win. I don't think we played that well. But yeah, I think we just need to transfer that home form into something competitive away from home, because thus far it's been deeply disappointing and it's going to cost us a top 8 position. We need to win at least 2 or 3 away games and not just rely on an away win in Zebre, which you usually get every season. So yeah, pretty important game, but hopefully.
Yeah.
A win out of that. I wouldn't expect a bonus point win, but certainly a 4 point win.
Scarlets at the moment are a classic case of first 15 is good, but once you get past that, in the last couple of games where we've brought the subs bench on, well, we've been well ahead and we brought the subs bench on and it's just completely fallen apart. Now we ended up getting the win in both cases, but it's worrying now. And the injury to Sam Costello has definitely got the potential to derail our season. It's definitely got the potential to derail the season. There's so much pressure on Gareth Davis now to basically, you're going to see him playing full 80s quite a lot. And the propping stocks is looking very shaky. Behind Henry Thomas, we've lost Sam Wainwright, we've lost Archer Holtz, we've lost Harry O'Connor. So it's now down to a guy called Gabe Hawley, who's in his first season of pro rugby, and for a tight head prop, that's a tricky play. I'm not hammering the kid, but he's got a big challenge. So yeah, we based on your away record, and if we want to be serious about making the playoffs, we've got to pick up the W here. But I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tight. Leinster versus Stormers. Any reason to think that? Yeah. Is there any reason to think that Leinster won't win this?
No. I think, look, Leinster will be a weaker team, as you'd imagine, because they'll lose so many players to Ireland camp, but there is talk of the return of one Mr. Dan Sheehan, which is never a bad thing. And regardless of how it goes, it's never a bad thing. But yeah, no, you'd back Leinster to keep their try bonus points run going. What is it? All bar one game, I think.
One game, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd imagine they'll keep that going.
What's your expectations for the team, Alan, for the Stormers? Obviously, do you think we'll see Manny Lebok in Dublin?
No, I think so. Yeah, I think otherwise there's no reason to have taken him. To the game. There's a couple of them sitting in the stands. Galant will probably start as well. I think Yankees will probably start at scrum half. I don't know if Evan Ruiz is injured. I think he might be out of the game. So hopefully they can do something, pick up maybe a bonus point, whether it be for a try. Any point in going to Leinster is a good point. It doesn't matter. But unlikely. I understand Leinster are going to probably thrash them. But if the Stormers can score 4 tries, maybe then that's something to take away from there. But apart from that, I think it's going to be a pretty one-sided game.
Yeah. Two biggest fan bases in the URC, if you go by attendances, Leinster versus Stormers. So hopefully it gets plenty of chat online. Cardiff versus Sharks. So again, kind of similar question of what Sharks team to expect. That we could see Sia Khaleesi playing in Cardiff, which is exciting. That would be good. The likes of Bongi and Benambi as well could be there. Cardiff have a decent history against the Sharks, though. A very decent history against the Sharks. And they have got a decent log place to preserve. So I don't know. What's everyone's thought on Cardiff versus Sharks then?
I think that's my game of the weekend, to be honest.
Game is around for me.
I feel like it's going to be the best game of the weekend, potentially. Yeah, depending on what side the Sharks are. I think Cardiff, surpassed expectations so far, and I think this is a good game to sort of, go into Six Nation break with, still being in the top 4. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, tries. I think this has got tries written all over it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Dragons versus Munster, Kalen. Based on sadly the performance of the Dragons at the moment, this has got to be a banker for you guys.
Yeah, look, Munster will their aim for the next 3 games will be 15 points. Away to Dragons, home to Scarlets, home to Edinburgh. But the Six Nations window is obviously a massive part of that, and Irish teams tend to dominate that Six Nations window. The one thing about this is we are expecting to see a very heavily rotated Munster team for this one, not just because of Ireland camp, but they were kind of treating this block very specifically that get through these 2 games and then go. So I have a feeling that the squad may have been maybe not split into 2, but certainly this game would have been earmarked for a couple of players. One of those, I would love to see one of the 2 Adogbo brothers getting a run out. Edwin is back training, and Sean is the young academy player who played for the under-20s last year. For no other reason apart from the fact that power athletes in the pack who can also run really quickly are very fun to watch. So hopefully, but hopefully Munster will get the job done. Just before we move on to Ulster, I just want to say, look, it's not a great kickoff time, 7:30 on a Sunday night or 5:30 on a Sunday night, but Ulster have decided to put on schools games before this one and kind of package it all together, which I think is a really cool initiative because obviously the school game is very important, specifically in Ireland. I don't know what's like in other countries. So I think it's a very cool initiative to get people in the door. You might get young kids who would be typically just there to see their brother play, also getting to watch Ulster as well. So I always like to see different initiatives to kind of change a run of the mill fixture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be a morale boosting win for Ulster this one, really. Get a couple of tries on the board, get everyone smiling again.
Yeah, get 4 try bonus point at least out of that one, I'd expect. Yeah.
Yeah. Just quickly back on the Dragons, Munster. Munster don't have a great record in Rodney Parade in recent years.
No, historically. Well, they lost last time out. Historically, though, the Dragons used to have a very good record against the Irish teams in Rodney Parade for whatever reason. Like one of the better ones, back in the like Magners League, Rabbit Direct days. It's faded since. Ever since they changed the pitch, I think that's the reason. I think it was the old muddy, like proper old school.
Quagmire. Yeah.
Yeah, 50% sand pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No drainage. Yeah.
Who
It's
needs
a lovely
drainage?
pitch. Lovely pitch at Rodney Parade now. Absolutely gorgeous. So that brings us to the end, I think, gents. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. I think we've a goodly amount of time been chatting. I'm frustrated that we as a podcast aren't going to have tons of momentum, to be honest, because the URC is so stop-start. And that's something I'd like to see change personally. I don't know about you.
I think that's one of the issues with, the season's quite long, but like I said previously, like I think it just cuts off, and obviously, subscribers and stuff like that want to hear more stuff, but it's also quite difficult to get everyone together. There's 4 of us, and with the breaks and stuff like that, with all of the rugby coming and going, it can be quite tough to get everyone together and, do this kind of stuff. But we do appreciate all the listeners, and their feedback as well. So
Yeah.
thank you
Positive,
guys.
negative, or in between.
And we will be covering the Six Nations in some shape or form, I am sure. Okay, that brings us to the end. Thank you to the Rugby A, B, and Cs, and nice to have everybody around. Like, subscribe, share links with friends, give us a 5-star rating if you're listening on the audio format, because that really helps grow the podcast. It's so hard to grow audio, so that is something that can really help. And we shall speak to you next week to talk about round 10 of the URC. Enjoy your rugby, and I hope everybody's team wins. Cheers.
See you later.
See ya.
Cheers.